Deb Rich competed on the second season of the Australian Outback, where she finished in 16th place. Starting on the Coocher tribe, Deb initially took on the role of leader to try and get her tribe into shape, but sadly rubbed a few people the wrong way and was the first person voted out of the game. I spoke to Deb about how she is finding watching her first season of Survivor in over a decade, the real reason behind building a shelter out of rocks, as well as which contestant went off at her after the first night of the game, and which former winner she had a chance meeting with at a charity event. Deb, welcome to Survivor Oz.
Thank you very much, Ben. I still am surprised every time I get a call to do an interview like this and people are interested in anything I have to say. I mean, that was a long time ago. And I got voted off first. I got kicked off the continent. Number one. That was me.
It's fascinating, kind of as I was saying there, about being a real fan favourite, because we always, right away, whenever we get an interview with somebody from the first two seasons, it's always a big deal. And from a personal point myself, Deb, your season still to this day is the one that obviously I connected with the most. It was the one that really got me into the show, and obviously being filmed in my very own country. So to even be able to get anybody from your season on the line, to me, still is a massive thrill. But for yourself, it's kind of interesting that, yeah, you say you're the first boot, but I feel you're more remembered, I think, than even a couple of people in your cast, Deb. So that must feel kind of cool after, 14 years to be able to have that still going on for you?
It's odd. It's strange to me, and I'm wondering, well, do they remember me from Survivor or from all the trash that the media dragged up afterwards, all the nonsense, and on the cover of the National Enquirer, and I'm just a regular, ordinary person. I try very hard to be a good person. I raised one child who's wonderful. He's in the FBI. I'm a good person, and the media just kind of kept me alive. I never could quite understand it, but I know Jeff mentioned this season of Survivor that just went down, Second Chances, and I was asked about that, and I don't know. I never really I think I maybe wanted a second chance in the beginning, but I got plans right now. I have to work one more year and then I'm retiring. And if it ever came around to it, another chance, would I take it? I might take it, but boy, the game has changed so much since I played it. There's so much treachery and lying and deceit, and it's so everything I'm not. I don't know if I could even compete against it unless I went on and competed as the person who was just true and honest and said what she said, and that got me somewhere, but I don't know if that would get me anywhere nowadays.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of looking at it that way, because particularly as you were saying with like Jeff on this season, and obviously we saw Kelly Wigglesworth, kind of these old school players that have returned after all these years and trying to adapt.
Kimmy's on there.
And Kimmy, of course. Sorry, how have I forgotten Kimmy? Yeah. Wow, gee, I'm rooting for her right now, Deb. I feel bad.
Kimmy. Yeah. Jeff and Kimmy, both from my season, and I mean, I was very happy to see them go back on. It was a dream. It was, you know what? It's almost like unfinished business, when you're on and all of a sudden you're unceremoniously off. And I dreamed about it for a long time. I kind of don't dream about it anymore because I don't know. I'm just moving on with life, and life has set me in different directions, and my whole world has changed and turned upside down, and right now, all I do is I'm working, and I want to be done in a year, and I want to hang out with my grandkids. And would I ever do Survivor again? I don't know. I might give it a shot, but I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity to give it a shot. I guess it'd have to be a large uproar and cry to get me to do it again, and then I might consider it. But
well, I'm telling you now, Deb, based when we get to our listener questions, you might have that going for you out there, because there's a lot of people sort of have kind of wanting to know about that. And I'm actually really happy to sort of hear, though, but it sounds like you've kept up with the show. I mean, are you just sort of watching this season based purely because of Jeff and Kimmy, or have you always maintained watching the show since you've been on it?
You know something? I have not watched the show. I watched the first season, and I'm going to tell you why I don't watch it. That's going to sound pretty stupid, I suppose, but I love animals and stuff like that, and I know on the show they kill chickens and they spear octopuses, and they're octopuses in general. They're just such an intelligent species and stuff. And I'm a little whacked when it comes to animals and killing things, and I hesitate to watch just because of that. Although I am watching this last show and I just fast forward when I don't want to see something. But that's the only reason. I mean, I keep up with it as best I can, but I haven't watched it. And the season that I'm watching now, I am loving it, and I kind of wished I'd never stopped watching it. But I did, and I'm just really enjoying this season, and I wish Jeff had gone a little bit further. But go Kimmy, she's still out there.
Yeah, definitely.
And
well, it's interesting with your season because pretty much every time somebody from your season returns, Deb, we've kind of worked it out. There's a running trend that they do very well because in the 5 seasons that they've had returning players from your season, they've always, at least one person has made it right to the end, to the final 4. Of course, Amber from your season went on to win All-Stars. So you've got a very high success rate, the Australian Outback, of playing a second time. So should you ever get that call again, Deb, the likelihood you could go very far in the game.
Yeah, well, maybe I will. Maybe I'll get that chance again, and maybe I'll even take it. I guess if I was ever going to make a call like that, I'd have to make it in the moment, and see what was going on in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I say, I've been pretty busy like this last year, and I knew this second chance was coming up, but my son was very sick. My son got cancer, and he was fighting for his life. I mean, literally fighting to stay alive. And Survivor's just not important when something like that is happening. But I'm hoping that everything is good with my boy now, and my life is just going to go on to be nice and smooth sailing. Well, and we'll see.
That's good. I was going to ask, everything going okay with him at the moment with his treatment and everything right now?
Well, he tested all clear. He had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he tested all clear. But then, much to my disappointment, in his last scan, he's got a lymph node that's swollen in his underneath his right jaw, and he's going to have it removed and biopsied, and it just never seems to end. But he's such a strong, great young man that I'm thinking he's going to be just fine. I'm going to hope that he's going to be just fine, because nothing else is obviously acceptable to me. My only child, he's my love, and I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah, well, definitely.
But I do love an adventure, Ben. I'm telling you something. I love an adventure, and I did feel like I kind of got cheated out of my adventure.
Well,
I didn't get to eat any of the bugs. I didn't get to jump off any cliffs. I didn't get to solve any puzzles. I didn't get to do any of that, and I'm not going to kid you when I say I really wish I had had a chance to, and I still kind of wish I'd had a chance to.
Yeah.
I'm a little older, but I'm still in pretty good health. And
age is just a number, Deb. Age is just a number. People, you've seen that plenty of times on Survivor. So yeah, was that what led you into? Was that what led you into applying that real kind of sense of adventure that you were just talking about then?
Adventure, absolutely. My husband had passed away not too long after that. He'd have never accepted that. Now he was a pretty conservative guy, and he never would have accepted me doing that. And I just said, you know what? I am going to have an adventure. And I had an adventure. It didn't go quite the way I wanted to, and I was very disappointed. And I'm sure not unlike anybody else who was on that show and got kicked off sooner than they hoped that they would get kicked off. I don't know. I sometimes think if I ever went back to the show, that maybe my honesty and forthrightness might get me further than you might think. And then I sometimes think, I would trust somebody, and I'd be gone. I'd be number one again. Would that not be like, oh my God, I don't know if I could live through that. First voted off again. Well, I'd be famous for that, I guess.
Well, we had, if I don't know if you're aware, there was a contestant who actually that happened to, Francesca. She was on the 22nd season, and she came back for the 26th season, and she got voted out first again. So you could...
Oh, no. How did she handle that?
Well, she kind of tried to take it with a bit of a grain of salt and have a bit of a laugh about it, but I think... that's got to cut deep. I can imagine that realistically you're going to be living with that. I mean, it's bad enough the first time.
I don't know. I think if that happened to me, I would probably just have to laugh. I took it real serious the first time. I just don't know if I could take it serious the second time. I would be too much like, oh no, I just can't let this make me miserable again for years. I have to just laugh over it or I'm going to cry.
And I think kind of in the age we live in right now with things like social media and all that, and as I said, your fan base out there, Deb, I think kind of it would, people would just laugh about it as you were saying, kind of just like, oh, yep, okay.
Yeah, I could see the introductions already. And Deb, first voted off in season 2 and first voted off in season whatever. And I'd be like, I'd come out there with my hands in the air.
Yep.
That's me, number 1 loser.
Yep.
Me and Francesca are tied for number 1 loser. We got to go for number 3, see what happens.
Yes, that's the spirit. Go back a third time to get voted out that third time in a row. There you go. Who's going to get that number
trick.
1?
The little hat trick, see if we can pull off a hat trick.
How, with the process of applying and kind of getting chosen and everything, because, look, this is obviously Survivor in the height of its absolute fame. The episode that ultimately you were voted out on was the Super Bowl lead-out program, it's kind of that big, the amount of viewers. So in the lead-up to that and kind of getting chosen, obviously there was a huge amount of secrecy around everything and the process and all that sort of stuff. How did you find all the pre-game stuff before you even got out there to Australia to play the game?
You know something? There's only been one time in my life, in my entire life, where I was absolutely dead certain of anything. And people thought I was crazy, but I knew before I ever applied to get on Survivor that I was going to be on Survivor. And some people call that arrogance. It wasn't arrogance. I'm the least arrogant person in the world. It was almost like God reached down and touched me and said, you're going to go and have your adventure. Because I remember going into work. I worked at a prison at the time. And I remember going up to the warden and saying, Warden, can I have a leave of absence? And he said, well, why do you need one? And I said, well, I'm going to be on Survivor. And he's like, you got on the show? And I held up my blank application and I said, no, but I will. I was just that positive. And it's funny because, I got sent out to California for all the tests, the psychological tests and the medical tests and the interviews. And that feeling stayed with me the entire time. And then Mark Burnett showed up in my hotel room. It must have been like 11 o'clock at night. There was a bang on the door, and there was Mark saying, hey, you're going to Australia. And I looked at him, and I said, well, of course I am. I've known it all along. But after he left my room, every feeling, every thought was gone. I had no idea what was about to happen. I knew I was getting on the show. I got on it, and then it was like emptiness. Now what? And you saw what? My confidence, my everything just wasn't there, and I just played stupidly, I guess. Although honestly, reality at the time was just in its infancy. I was on the second show. I didn't know how to handle it or what to do, and the end result was I went home early. But by the same token, Mark Burnett was great to me. He sent me all over Australia. I went whitewater rafting on the Tully, and I went snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. I spent time in Darwin and Perth, and he paid for everything. And then he said to me, you know what, you have a son in the Marines, don't you? And I said, yeah. He said, well, why don't you get on a plane? And he flew me over to Beijing, China. My son was, working at the American Embassy over there, and he sent me to China for 2 weeks. So I got a lot out of it, and then I came back to the States, and Rosie O'Donnell had me on her show after the fact. She didn't want me on her show initially, she had her reasons, but she had me open her show, and she gave me a brand new car, and I had some really great moments on it. I got to do a lot of stuff you can't pay to do. You either get a chance to do it or you don't. You can't buy it. And that was great, and that was wonderful. So I had an adventure. I just didn't get the adventure that I wanted. I love being out in the wilderness. I have a dog, and it's just me and my dog. And when I have days off or time off, we're out in the woods, we're hiking, and she's my best friend in the world.
It's fascinating kind of with all the trip and everything that happens with it, because I guess if you want to be a silly thing to say, I guess, but if you want to be the first boot of any season, you want to be the first boot of one of the first couple, because, as I said, this is sort of when it's at its height, and you probably got someone like, as you said, Mark Burnett, willing to do a little bit more of that, whereas nowadays I think it's kind of very much predetermined where people go.
Right.
You go somewhere,
Right.
that's it, no ifs, ands or buts about it. I remember actually the very first time we had Kimmy on this show a couple of years ago, she was talking about when she was voted out and kind of her experience of travelling around Australia. So it's interesting, kind of, as much as it sucks to get voted out, still getting to see a lot of Australia, something which I guess, you probably might not have ever been able to do beforehand.
No, I never would. And honestly, as a younger person, there were two places in my entire life that I wanted to go to that I just really wanted to visit. One was Australia, and one was I wanted to climb the Great Wall of China. And I ended up doing both of them. So I fulfilled a dream for myself. I didn't get to play the game, which was sad, but I got to fulfill the dream of going to both of those places. And like I say, Australia, are you kidding me? The people there are wonderful. They just love you. They were so kind and supportive and generous. And then I got to go to China and climb the Great Wall of China with my son and go to Tiananmen Square. And so it was a great old adventure. And I remember getting on the plane to fly back to America, and Kimmy finding out what I'd been doing and where I'd been going, and she was mad because she had been put on a bus and sent to a youth hostel, I thought. And there were like 25 people living in a room, and I'm thinking, whoa, well, that wasn't my experience. And it was kind of funny at the time, because I felt like, well, you at least got to stay on a game a little bit more.
Yes, exactly.
But,
and she's got to come back since, Deb. She's back again, so I guess,
Yeah. Good for her. Good for her. And I look at the game right now, and I think, she could go all the way in this thing. She certainly could.
I'm hoping so.
That'd be great.
I am rooting very much for her to win this game, and it's
and then every time I talk to someone like you about this game, I find myself thinking, oh, I'd really like to play that game again. But then I go back into my normal life, and I go, Deb, stop it. Stop it.
You'll hang the phone up, and you'll be like, oh, no. That was wrong. I shouldn't have been thinking about that. No.
I don't know if it'll be quite that quick, but, like I say, I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life recently, and a lot of it not great. I mean, just from a personal point of view. But I just bought a house in Wisconsin, and I'm working in Illinois right now, but I'm planning on retiring here within a year.
Fantastic.
And I'll be up by my son. My son's a federal agent up there, and I'll be up there, and I've got a 4-month-old grandson, a 18-month-old grandson, and a 10-year-old granddaughter, and I love being around my grandkids, and my granddaughter would be old enough to actually see me on Survivor, so that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool if she got to actually see me play the game. But we'll see what happens. I don't know if it's in the cards for me. It was second chance this time, so I may not get another chance.
Well,
I don't know.
We're sparking that fire not only within you there, Deb, but I'm hoping that maybe some people at CBS might accidentally stumble across this interview, and they're like, hang on a minute, we remember her. She'd be good to come back and put it out to the vote. So, and plus, there's always talk, people say like, oh, let's have a season with all the winners. But, I think there's still an opportunity there. Have a season with all the first boots.
With all the losers.
Yeah. Second chances with the first boots. Like, why not?
Man, I don't know if that's the season I want to be on, the losers season. Thanks a lot, Ben. Let's have the losers come back.
But if you look at it positively, Deb, you're kind of like the doyen of all the first boots. You're, that one that I think people, no offense to Sonia from the first season, but I think you're kind of the one that stands out the most in those early days as like, hey, Deb, that first boot, we remember her the most. So there you go. You might be held up very highly.
Something though, Ben? Here's the one thing you're not thinking about, okay? If I go on a season of all losers and I'm the first voted off again, I am the ultimate loser. The ultimate loser. Instead of just being on there with regular people, some who have never played, some who have played and maybe not been the first voted off, I'd go on the season of the losers and become the biggest loser. That would be really that would take a lot of guts to go do that show.
I think, yes, it would, the fear of being that first boot on a first boot season like that would,
yes.
the first vote would be very interesting.
Sonia's got to be in her 70s. If she went on the show and she beat me out, oh my! I'd have to have plastic surgery. I'd have to change my appearance, change my name again.
And it would take another 14 years for a random Australian podcast to give you a phone call to do an interview with you.
From Tasmania, no less. Who calls from Tasmania wanting an interview? How do you say no to someone calling from Tasmania? You just don't. You just do it.
We have that going for us.
Honestly, in the second season that I was on, I never, ever got to just cut loose and be me. I was just, those first 3 days out there, it was just nerve-wracking. I never got to just fall into character, which is just who you're seeing right now. I'm crazy, I'm funny, I'm not anything like they tried to portray me, like this bossy, pushy woman. I'm just the least person in the world to be like that. But that's how I came off. But I'm just wild and crazy and funny, and nobody ever got that impression of me when I was on that show.
Well, it's interesting kind of in going back and watching bits of it that, yeah, it's kind of very heavily showcased of you kind of being, in control and sort of telling people what to do.
And I wasn't.
But there's a couple of scenes there. I think it's kind of when you initially get to your camp and you're all jumping in the river to kind of celebrate it. There's a scene, a few bits there where it really looks like, you're obviously really having fun and getting along with people and all that sort of stuff. I mean, were there any moments that perhaps you can remember that, weren't shown of you in a real different light, as you were saying, compared to just controlling people, and that you were sort of kicking back and having fun at all?
Well, the only time I think I was showed as really controlling people, and this was I just got tired of the situation. When we first got off the plane and we're headed to our camp, we had all that gear on our back, and we're hiking, and we're going in circles. We've been going for like an hour, and I had a ton of weight on my back. And we had Kimmy, who had the map, Nick had the compass, and they were both in different spots. One was in the front, one was in the back, and I didn't even know their names. I just said, hey, you with the map, you with the compass, get together and put us where we need to be. And that was me taking control. Personally, I think that was me stepping up and having half a brain that nobody else wanted to do. You got a map, you got a compass, work together. I'm dying here. Get us where we need to be. But I think that was, I don't think there was any other time that I was bossy. I mean, I know Jeff tries to bring up how I said, let's use rocks to build a shelter. But I go back to the three pigs. Whose house stayed up? The one who made it of straw, the one who made it of sticks, or the rock? A rock.
That's a very good point.
On.
I want to definitely ask you about that.
Right.
I definitely want to ask you about that. But kind of, I mean, who were the people that you were getting along with early on? Were there people that you were drawn to in those, initial moments, particularly back at the beach when you were kind of getting shelter and getting everything together?
I liked Roger, of course. I liked Roger. Well, it's easier for me to tell you who I didn't get along with. I didn't get along with Alicia. Mm-hmm. I did not get along with Alicia, and I didn't get along with her because I remember the first night there. It was freezing. We were soaked, and all I could think of was, you idiot, why did you jump in the water? I was thinking about myself, why did you do that? So we're laying there at night, and we're shivering, and we're kind of like back to back. And I've got a rock digging into my hip. I mean, it was painful. And so I moved a little bit, which set off a flurry of curses from Alicia. And finally, I ended up getting up and leaving the shelter because I was so uncomfortable. And I didn't want to move and wake her up again. And so I figured I'll just remove myself from the situation. That way I don't annoy anybody. And the next morning she woke up and she went after me. She was so mad at me because when I left, I was laying next to her and she got cold. Yeah, so me and Alicia, she was just she was abrasive, I thought. She was abrasive, at least in my opinion, towards me, she was abrasive. And everybody else, honest to God, I never really got a chance to know anybody. And Jeff and I have stayed in touch. Mike Scoopin and I stay in touch, you know, a little here, a little there. And I don't have any negative thoughts about anybody, honestly. Just that first night in the shelter with Alicia, it gave me a real bad opinion of her because, you know, she just went after me, and I didn't think I had done anything for her to go after me. And I don't like to be confrontational. I can be. I'm not somebody who just steps back and lets someone walk all over me. But, geez, you know, the game just started. I didn't want to make enemies. That's why I left the shelter and froze by myself, so I didn't want to annoy people by moving around, and I still got in trouble. So they got me for group dynamics. Oh, I didn't fit in. And you know what? The first night we were there, we were having a conversation. And, of course, it's dark out, but you have all the cameras around you. And the conversation was like MTV Beach House. It was just, to me, inappropriate. I mean, they were talking about things that, good Lord, you guys, please, don't ask me that. And I said, I don't mind what you talk about, but I'd rather not answer those questions. I don't even know your name. And that just did me in. That conversation that night and, you know, me saying, hey, you with the compass, you with the map, it did me in. You know, and I look back at it now and I say, could I have done anything different? I could have not confronted the map and the compass thing, but as far as that conversation that night, wasn't me, never will be me. There's certain things that are personal and private in your life that you don't discuss with a bunch of strangers with cameras facing you, and that wouldn't change. Yeah. That wouldn't change one little bit.
Do you feel...
But that did me in.
Do you feel if you had been on Ogre Call that things would have been different?
I don't know, maybe because Tina was great. Tina and I, you know, I haven't been in touch with Tina for a long time, but we were in touch for quite a while. Plus, I really liked Amber. Amber and I, you know, got along really well. I think it might have. And Marilyn and I, we were good friends. But it was right from the get-go. It was Elizabeth and Alicia, the younger ones. They just singled me out as not fitting in. And, you know, I was 20 years older than them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was a disparity. Of course there was. But it doesn't mean that you can't embrace somebody who's older or younger. It's just the competition happened. We lost. I never got a chance to mend anything or fit in. And during the competition, of course, Roger, who couldn't swim, he had learned to swim right before the show. You'll notice when they take off, Roger gets caught in the ropes and everybody's gone. And I go back for Roger to help him. I get him untangled and everything. And when we get there, you know, we're well behind at this point. And there was just nothing I could do. And I know Alicia stated at one point, you know, sometime after the fact, that when I got on the little raft, I pulled myself across with everybody that I just sat there and wouldn't help. And I remember thinking, oh, that's messed up. The raft was tiny. There was only so many people who could pull. My goal was to sit in the middle and balance and not knock us over and put the torch out. And we ended up falling over anyhow. But there was nothing that I could do right at that point. I was a marked woman. That was just the way it was. I was marked and I was going home. And I remember Roger saying the one regret he had in the whole game was voting for me. And he voted for me, and I don't blame him in the slightest. He voted for me because everybody else decided I was going to be sacrificed because I was different. And he didn't want to go against anybody and end up getting in trouble himself. And I don't feel bad about that in the slightest. He did what he had to do. I played the game the best I could in the time I had. I'm a pretty honorable, honest person, and I tried hard, and it just wasn't to be. It was not to be.
Yeah. It's interesting kind of hearing that and sort of everything because, I mean, obviously, you know, as you sort of said before, this is the second season of Survivor. So
Right.
things like what we see today, as you've probably realised by watching kind of season 31 compared to season 2. I mean, it's kind of like even day one alliances and strategies. I mean, people voted out first now for so many different reasons, you know. I mean, it's never as clear cut, I guess, as it was in those early days when it always did seem to be the so-called bossy one, or, you know, I guess in Borneo it kind of came down to Sonia's age.
But even if that's the case, Richard won in the first one, and he was the most annoying, outspoken guy in the whole bunch.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, you know what? It's all a crapshoot when you get out there. It's all a crapshoot. You could be marked to be the one going home, and then someone says something that someone else doesn't like, and then they're going home. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to ask, Deb, we have a little introduction on our show for some episodes where we play famous quotes from Survivor. You're in our introduction for your famous quote, and you already talked about it, about building a shelter out of rocks. And this is, I think...
I have a famous quote?
Well, this is it, Deb. This is, I think, a lot of your
You're
fan base...
telling me, Ben.
I'll have to send you a copy of our introduction, because a lot of your fan base and a lot of kind of what people like to remember is that line where you talk about, let's build a shelter out of rocks. I'm not doing your accent justice. With
As
rocks.
a little child, I went back to the 3 pigs, and the wolf couldn't blow the house down made of rock. Come on. Am I the only one who gets this?
Well, did you succeed in building any of the shelter out of rocks, or were you completely shut down?
I was shut down. I was persona non grata. I was, and I couldn't start a fire. And did anyone else start a fire? No. But I was smart enough to bring magnified reading glasses as my one thing that I was allowed to bring. They don't let you bring anything of use. So I said, ooh, I'll sneak my magnified reading glasses in, and I'll use them to start a fire, you know? I mean, that's a pretty smart way to think. How was I to know that there would be no sun? There was no sun. It was overcast. There was no fire. And I'll tell you something. I was in New Hampshire, and there was a bunch of kids stranded on an island. I was out there boating. I was on a boat. And as I got closer to the island, I saw these kids out there, and something had happened to their boat. And I remember getting closer, and all of a sudden this boy looks at me and goes, "Got a match?" And I was like, "Oh, you little bastard." Because they knew me from Survivor and not being able to start a fire. I took more heat over not being able to start a fire. And come on, it was soaking wet, rainy, and cold. Who was going to start a fire? But I took a lot of heat over that because I decided to make an effort to do it. And I guess don't make an effort to do something if you can't do it, because they're going to remember that you didn't do it.
Yeah.
But none of those other guys started a fire either, so give me a break.
Well, I guarantee you, Deb, if you were to bump into a Survivor fan tomorrow, the first thing they would say to you is, "Got any rocks?" Or, "Come build something with me for rocks."
What is the problem with building something out of rocks? I don't get it. I don't get it. I stand by the rocks, Ben.
Well, maybe. I'm waiting for somebody to...
14 years later, 15 years later, I stand by the rock.
Well, you said you bought a house recently. What's it made out of, Deb?
It's partly brick, okay?
Which is a type of rock, is it not?
What do you think of that? Yes, it is.
So there you go, people. After all these years, you've heard it right from Deb's mouth. She stands by it, and it was a good idea, okay? Kucha, if you're listening,
that's right.
Kimmy, Jeff, Elizabeth, come on.
Give me a break,
yes.
You guys. You know something? Afterwards, we all met in New York for, I was going on my little whirlwind tour, and we all met at the Fifth Avenue, and we were having dinner, and I remember them saying to me, "We wish we never voted you off. We wish we never did." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'd like to push you all off a cliff. What do you think of that, rat bastard?"
Oh, that's gold. That's gold. So when the vote out came, you're mentioning obviously the trip that you got to sort of do around Australia. So did you have any interaction with any of the other people that were voted out before the jury, before you kind of went home? Or, I mean, did you just not see them because you...
I actually spent a lot of time with Marilyn, with Mitch, and with Kelly, a little bit of time with Kelly. But then when I decided to go off to Beijing, that was it. I didn't have any more interaction with them. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Marilyn and Mitch. You know, Mitch was like another son to me. He was probably about the same age as my son. And well, Mitch is like 8 feet tall, and my son is 6'5", so it was kind of like having my son trotting along with me.
Yeah,
kind of cool.
We actually, the last person from your season we would have interviewed would have been Marilyn, and yeah, she spoke actually very highly of you, and said sort of how close.
Marilyn was great.
Yeah, and I remember also
Mad dog.
In the reunion too, Kel talked up a little bit of sort of getting to know you and everything along those lines as well. So Kel was somebody again who sort of was, you know, time was cut quite short and didn't get to see a whole lot of him, but I mean, he still looked like a decent guy to be able to sort of get to know.
Yeah, he was. I didn't meet anybody that I didn't like it. And just because I did not vibe with Alicia on the show, it doesn't even mean that she's not a great person. I'm sure she is. You know, when we had interactions after the show, and we got along just fine. But I'm just talking specifically in my 3 days on the show, I had the hardest time dealing with Alicia. And I don't, you know, this is going to sound like whining, but I don't think I really got a fair chance. But you know what? I got a much fairer chance than that one person who, remember that Survivor where they picked teams and that person didn't get picked and they got sent home? What the hell is that? Everybody completely turns their life upside down to go and be on this show. That person did not even have a chance to play. They got sent home. Did they ever come back? I don't even know who this person was. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Wanda and Jonathan from Palau. No, they were sort of kind of slated to come back a season later. But I don't know if you ever saw the season that happened afterwards, but there were still 2 people from that season who came back, but that was purely because their tribe that they were on lost every single challenge and was basically whittled down to one person. So they were given second chances based off that. Good. Yeah.
I felt really bad for them, and when I saw that happen, I said, I had a much better chance at being on the show than you. I've got nothing to complain about. I'll still complain, though, mind you. I might not have anything to complain about, but I still will. And if I ever get a chance to play again, if it ever happened, I may still try to build a shelter out of rocks. I'll make you guys eat your words yet. And I'll start a damn fire.
Yes, you will build the best damn shelter out of rocks and build the best damn fire ever in the history of Survivor.
It'll have windows.
Yes.
It will even have windows.
And a chimney for the fire.
Yeah, exactly, that I build.
Obviously,
listen, all I can say is my dog loves me.
Yeah, well, that's
nobody else might.
We
but my
love
dog
you,
does.
Deb. We love you. Come on now, you've got all these people listening right now. This is the cult of Deb. That's what I'm putting it out there. The cult of Deb from Survivor. It works perfectly. Obviously, it's kind of getting out. We voted out first, and when it airs, as I said, it was the Super Bowl lead out program. So a lot of viewers, massive amount of attention around this season, and obviously we heard from you in the reunion, and you've mentioned a little bit about sort of all the backlash that kind of came against you after being voted out. I mean, that must have just, I could imagine, just being the part of it that sucked big time. You were talking about this adventure and all these sort of great things that you got to see, but you can never anticipate kind of everything that happens after that. And that must have been, for quite some time, very difficult to deal with all that backlash from it.
Well, it's like this. I feel I don't care what people say about me anymore. I'm at a point in my life where I'm either happy with me or I'm not happy with me. I mean, I'm 60 years old. When you live your life, you like to hope that every single year you become a better person. And that's how I live my life, to become a better person at all times. I mean, if that's not your goal, then there's something the matter with you. And it seemed to me like in the space of 15 minutes, the media branded me as this awful person. I was seeing a guy I shouldn't be seeing, and just this and that, and I was on the National Enquirer, and all I could think of was, I'm 42 years old, and I've tried very hard to be a good, moral person, and the media comes in and snaps their finger and brands me as this terrible person, and it was really hard, but honestly, I went through something much harder than that about 5 years ago, which I won't get into, but I feel like it destroyed my life, my world, and put me in a place of not even wanting to be alive anymore. And that's not me. I mean, you talk to me, do I look like that kind of person or sound like that kind of person? I mean, I'm strong, and I'm a survivor. I'm the person who can get through everything. And when that happened to me, I'd say that was like 5 years ago. I'd say I'm starting to come back to myself a little bit more, but it's inside of me. It's nuclear winter. I will never, ever be okay again. But, you go on. You live your life. I got my grandkids. I love them. I got my dog. I'm pretty blessed in a lot of ways. But somebody came into my life and did a really good job of destroying me. So I consider myself a victor right now, and there's nothing that anybody can do to me now. There's nothing anybody can do to me. But the sad part of that is I just don't trust people anymore. And I was the most trusting, caring person. It's gone. Gone.
Wow.
So...
Well, I'm glad.
I don't know.
I'm very glad that you're still going though, Deb, and as you said, just from talking to you now, it's sort of, I see you as a strong person, so it's kind of,
I am.
yeah.
I am.
So, well, that's...
But I was down there, man. It's kind of, I don't wish that on anybody feeling like that, but I can say this now about that. I can understand people who are there because I couldn't understand it before. I think a lot of times you can't understand things in life if you haven't been there. Like, how can you counsel an alcoholic or a drug addict if you've never had that kind of addiction in your life? And I've never in my life felt out of control with my life that I wish I would die. And then all of a sudden it happened, and now I can understand people. I'm a lot more empathetic, than I used to be. But I'm a damaged person, too. Now, it would be fun to get out and try to play the game again. It would. I'm not going to deny it, I guess. It would be fun, but...
Has that approach ever happened? Has anybody from CBS or Survivor ever reached out and even asked the possibility, would you be interested in coming back again?
I've had people ask me that, and I don't think I ever reacted to it in a positive way, simply because I was still fighting my way through what had happened to me. But and then when the second chance season started, I was so close to being done and retiring and not working anymore. I just can't walk right now. But I just bought my house, and I'm only working long enough to furnish it because I don't have anything to put in it. I'm just refurnishing this whole home, and as soon as I'm done with that, I'm done. Mm-hmm. So I think at that point I'd probably be open for another adventure if the chance ever came along.
Right. Well, as I said, let's keep saying we'd love to see that happen. So CBS, if you're listening, I think we should make it happen. I'm going to get to some listener questions here in a second, Deb, because we got a few in, and I've got a set of final questions that we always ask at the end of each interview. But just quickly, you mentioned kind of you've stayed in touch with Varna a bit over the years, a few of the others.
Sure.
Is there anybody else that you have stayed in touch, not necessarily from your season? I mean, anybody from even, say, the first season perhaps that you've kind of remained in touch with, I guess, over the years?
No, I never have. I mean, I've spoken with Richard a couple of times, and the young man who won, was it China? What was his name? Todd.
Yeah.
I met him at a fundraiser for animal rights, and I adored him. He was a sweet young guy, and then I saw the crap that poor young kid was going through. But no, I changed my name, and I don't know that anybody could find me if they wanted to, if they didn't already know where I was.
Right. It's kind of interesting, sort of, as I was saying, like just this fandom that you've got, and kind of, we'll get to these listener questions, sort of the amount we got in, because it's really interesting. And I know when we sort of, our aim on this show, Deb, is to chat to basically every contestant in the history of the show, but there are people that we, hold very much high regards. And one person that you've spoken to, Noah, he works for us here on the show, and he's helped arrange this interview.
Okay.
I I would have to say, is your number one fan. Now, Noah is...
Well, Noah should get in touch with me then and talk to me.
Well, he has kind of in the lead up to this. So I think kind of he needs to be able to talk a little bit more to you freely rather than just setting up an interview. Because to put this into context... Noah loves first boots. Like, that's just his favourite players in the game. But whenever you talk about his favourite players and everything, about who he loves the most in Survivor, your name always comes up. So I really feel that if you could give Noah a really good shout out right now, because he loves you to bits, Deb.
Noah, you know how to reach me on instant message. Talk to me. And thank you for being my biggest fan. I mean, that makes me feel good. It really does. Thank you very much.
It's fascinating because we would always talk about this in the group, and kind of when this was announced that you were coming on the show, the first thing is like everybody's going, Noah, you must be so excited. Noah, how are you feeling? So, and he's actually, I will say, he's messaging me right now going, how's it going? How is she? So...
I'm doing better than I have been in the last 5 years. Let's put it that way. But yeah, tell Noah I'll welcome any message he sends to me.
Exactly. There you go. All right, let's just have a quick go through these listener questions. Thanks everyone who sent these in. And again, sometimes these do get answered in our main interview. So if I'm ignoring a question, I'm not doing it that way. Let's see here. Chris Downs, sort of been answered. What do you wish you did differently in the game, and would you play again if given? We've already answered that bit. We would know you would play again. But is there anything that you kind of touched on it that you would do differently if you get given that opportunity?
Yeah, I'm a different person now. Like I say, when I first got there, I was lost. I just didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know how to treat people, and consequently, I wasn't me. I didn't let me just come through. I would just be mean. I'd be funny. I'd laugh, and I wouldn't try to take the lead. And that's, you know what, when you're dealing with 16 people, all pretty much type A personalities, that's just a kiss of death. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do that again.
There you go. Now, Nick Chester, another one of our Ozlots who works for us on the show, he says, we've had seasons of Survivor now where players who have been voted out get a chance to win their way back in the game. We've had that with Redemption Island. I don't know if you've ever seen bits of that, Deb. But Nick says, is this something that you would have liked in the Australian Outback? Kind of when you were voted out, there was that opportunity for you to win your way back into the game?
Oh yeah, are you kidding me? Because when I got booted off your continent, I was brokenhearted. In retrospect, I thought to myself, you know what? I should not have let Jeff put my torch out, because technically I'm not out of the game if he doesn't put my torch out. I could have run. I could have taken my torch and run, and until they could catch me and put it out, I was still in the game. That's how bad I wanted to stay in the game.
Wow.
So yeah, Redemption Island would have worked for me.
That's a very good point, actually. I'm surprised no one's ever tried that. Like, you can't put me out of the game,
yeah, well,
Jeff.
I guarantee you, if I get on that show and someone tries to vote me off, I'm running. I'm out of there.
Do it.
I'm not going to stand there and be led like a lamb to the slaughter. Are you kidding me? My torch is staying lit.
Good way of looking at it. Harold Rice asked a question. We talked a little bit about Sonia before from Borneo. Harold asked, do you think you did a better job than Sonia from Borneo?
Oh, I'm not going to say I did a better job than Sonia. She was a nice lady. You know what? She just, I think they voted her off just, I don't know, maybe some of the same reasons I got voted off, maybe because she was older. I don't know. I wouldn't say I did a better job. She was on the first season. She had nothing to go by on what to expect. Mm-hmm. She had nothing to go by.
Yeah.
At least I had one season.
Very different, very
Hello,
different.
Sonia. How are you doing?
We had her on.
I like Sonia.
Had her on a couple of times, actually. So, yeah, hello, Sonia, if she's listening. Always fun to chat to her. Now, this one's an interesting question. Brandon Nelson, how do you feel about Elizabeth? And what was she like about on your tribe for the first 3 days back in 2001? I mean, it's obviously a loaded question. Elizabeth has gone on to very big things since your season.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, what's your take on her?
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, when I got voted off, I found out it was kind of like spearheaded by Elizabeth and Alicia because of group dynamics. And I was pretty annoyed, honestly. But after everything, and we got together, Elizabeth is one of the sweetest, kindest people in the world. She's also a Republican. Go, Elizabeth. So, yeah, I was mad initially. I got voted off first. Of course I was upset. But you know what? As soon as I got off and I really got to know Elizabeth and her husband, Tim Hasselbeck and everything, I just thought they were great. I'm not someone who holds a grudge, or I didn't used to be. I kind of hold one nowadays, but back in the day I did not. So no, Elizabeth was really a nice, sweet, kind young girl, and I got outplayed.
Great, good to hear. Not that you got outplayed, that's not good to hear, but good there about Elizabeth, that's what I meant. Now, a couple of these have been...
she's a nice person.
A couple of these have been answered. Julian, one of our Oslets, his has been answered. Most of these actually have. This is an interesting one. We tweeted out that we were talking to you, and we actually got a tweet back from Varna. And Varna said to tell you, give her hell, I love her. Tell her that she rips me apart because it's true. I am Deb's biggest fan. So I think Varna's going to have to fight it out, though, with Noah. I would argue Noah might be a bigger fan than even Varna. But there you go. Varna sending in a message to you there, Deb.
Well, good for Jeff. And Jeff and I get along just well. We butted heads on our show because I went and told everybody that he wanted to go home because he wasn't feeling good. And he says I lied. And I says, no, I did not lie. You said, I don't feel good. I could really use a cold beer and a pizza. Well, to me, you might as well have said I want to go home because you're not going to get that out here. So I went and told everybody. He said I lied. I didn't lie. Manipulated the truth, maybe.
Gold. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks to everyone who sent the questions in. I mean, there's just a few comments here. Rhett Butler says, the legendary Deb, this is amazing. Best first boot ever. So there you go. Nick Alexander, I'm so excited for Noah. See, even our listeners are saying how excited they are for Noah. Please tell her I find it so disappointing that she was treated away and, they ask, do you keep in contact with any of our survivors? We've already answered that question, so thanks, Nick.
Right.
Here we go. This is a good one. This will be the last one, then I'll get into our final five. Mike Scow says, Deb, I'd love to see you on TV again. Would you do The Amazing Race with Varna or someone else?
I absolutely would do The Amazing Race. And with Jeff, are you kidding me? That would be a riot. Oh, my God, that would be the best.
Yes, I would.
The Amazing Race is one of my favorite shows. I would do that in 5 seconds with Jeff Varner.
That would be gold to watch. Make that happen too, CBS. Get Deb and Varner on The Amazing Race. I'm watching that right now.
I'd be on a plane in 5 seconds flat. Not a question in the world.
I could see that working. I could see that pair working for some reason. That would be great. Wow.
Plus, I could take Jeff in a fight, so that would work for me.
Yes, exactly.
I definitely have to be able to beat my partner up if it comes to
that. Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, we'd be on the Dr. Phil show afterwards, I'm sure.
Mending your relationship afterwards from The Amazing Race.
Yes.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone who sent the questions in. Deb, we wrap up every interview with a set of 5 quick-fire questions. Now, given that you haven't seen a lot of Survivor, you can base this off people from your season and from what you have seen and what you do know. And please feel free, if you don't know an answer or anything, you can simply plead the fifth, because that's my new favourite saying. I'm not even American, okay, Deb, but I've learnt that. I love it. What are 3 things that you learnt about Jeff Probst during your time on Survivor?
3 things. I'm only going to give you one thing because, as you said, I didn't have a lot of contact with him, but I thoroughly enjoyed him when we were off the show, when we were just, like in New York, hanging out at a party. He was so down to earth, such a nice guy. I really, really like Jeff.
Have you kind of in watching this season, have you kind of enjoyed seeing how much he's changed and developed over the years?
Yeah, because he asks the tough questions. He gets right down to the nitty-gritty, man. You can't hide. If there's some shit going down, he knows about it, and you're getting called out on it. I love that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. I love Simon Cowell, too, if that tells you anything, because they go for the jugular. I love that. I'm all about let's get it out there.
Simon Cowell is a host of Survivor. That would be interesting. Question number 2 now. I don't know. Based on what you have seen, Deb, this one might be a bit difficult to answer. What's your favourite and least favourite season? Maybe just even of any that you've seen, I guess.
I guess my favorite one was probably the first one, and I'm only going to say that because it hooked me and it got me into the show. And that's the reason, and I even went on this show was because of season number 1. So I would say number 1 was my favorite because of that, strictly because of that. And you're right, I haven't watched a lot of the shows, but I'm really loving the one that I am watching.
Good.
Right now, that Immunity Idol, that's crazy stuff. I love that.
Has it hooked you enough? Do you reckon you'll keep watching it now that you've sort of gotten back into it from this season?
Yeah, I would say I will definitely watch it at this point.
Great.
I finally, Jeff getting on the show and Kimmy made me break out of my shell, and so now I'm there.
Well, I tell you what, next season we might have to get you back on to do an episode discussion to get your thoughts on the next season. How does that sound?
Okay, I'll be watching.
We'll remember that. Question number 3, again, you can base this purely on your season, Deb. Who to you is the sexiest ever contestant?
Is it, from period?
Yeah.
From every Survivor?
Yeah, or just your... if you don't sort of know enough outside of your season, feel free to just go from your season.
Boy, that's a tough question for me because these guys are all so young. I don't look at them like that. I don't look at them like that. But the guy who just got voted off of this season, Wu, I thought that's a classically handsome young man and really nice guy. I don't know, maybe him.
We'll take that. We'll go with Wu. That's a good answer. Again, Deb, question number 4. Based on what you do know, who to you is the greatest player never to have won?
Boston Rob, did he ever win the show?
He did end up winning on his 4th go.
Because he was really good. He's really good. I think he's one of the best that ever played it. Myself, I think he's one of the best that ever played it. And I guess I'd have to say me.
You.
I never got a chance to prove it, but I think I could have been the best. I tell you, I went to Vegas after my show. I was like, everybody hated me there, the dealers, because they lost a lot of money on me. They all voted for me, and I got crushed.
Wow.
But I think I could be a good player if I could go in with a way to win that did involve all the deceit and trickery. I think I could. I would like to go and win that game based on decency and honesty. That would be cool.
Good answer. I like it. Noah's happy right now hearing that too. Out of the winners that you...
I mean, you have to be a little deceitful, mind you, but very little. Like, I'm not going to tell them I have an idol, but yeah.
They've done very well this season, actually. But you've chosen a good season to watch it with idols because nobody's telling anybody this season that they have idols, and generally that's very rare. If you ever go back and watch any season of Survivor, you'll see that generally it's out there and sort of people know.
Do they say it?
Yeah, a lot of people do say they use it.
Fish told about his secret power, and that backfired, and he had to say goodbye.
So there's a message in there for you, Deb. That's telling you something. Go out there for that second chance.
It is.
Exactly. Yep. Out of the winners that you do know, who is your least favourite, if you have a least favourite?
Well, I'm not really happy with Richard and what he's done with his life and how I don't think he handled things well at all.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't want to be a judge of people. I don't think you should judge people. But, I think Richard's a pretty nice guy, and he just messed up a little bit. And you're right. I wish that I had watched more of the seasons and I could have more that I could tell you. But I just don't, I guess, because I watched it mainly because of the animal thing, but I didn't watch it because of that, but also because it still hurt for a long time to get voted off first. It hurt a lot. I'm not going to lie about that. It did.
We've learned that a lot, I think, over these kind of even getting a lot of people from sort of the really early days of Survivor that, some people just don't watch it. I remember when we very first got Kelly Wigglesworth on the show, and this was years before she ever was even in the frame to come back again. She said she didn't even watch her season. She said, no, didn't watch it, haven't watched anything since. So, it's kind
Never watched my season. I never watched my season. That would have been too much like pain. I watched the first season, and I'm watching this season. And other than seeing a few little bits and pieces here and there, like I loved Rupert. I thought that pirate guy, he was great. I loved Rupert. stealing the shoes. Yeah, little things here and there that I've seen.
Final question for you, Deb. You kind of touched on this, I think, with Boston Rob, so he could be your answer for this. I'm not too sure. But out of who you do know, who to you is the greatest ever player in the history of Survivor and why?
I think Rob was one of the best players there was. I just do. I watched a lot of him. I might have even watched that All-Star one, that one.
Mm-hmm.
I might have watched that because I remember seeing him on there thinking, that guy is good. He is really, really good. Very smart. He comes across as someone who's, not that bright, but he's smart.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, he came back and won. So, yeah, a lot of people think the same thing too. Boston Rob. And
I've lost touch with him and Amber. I'm not in touch with him anymore. I don't even know if they're still married.
They are.
They are. Well, I really like them a lot. They're two of my favorite people who I never keep in touch with. But yeah, I really like them a lot. I met Rob at a golf outing. And he was insane at that outing.
Fantastic.
He needed to be shook. Someone needs to take him and shake him, but I really like Rob.
No, they're still together, Deb.
And I love Amber.
They're still together,
awesome.
And they've pumped out about 4 kids, so they're doing very well with themselves. So hello if they're listening to this.
Great to hear.
Indeed. Deb, this has been an absolute pleasure. Can I just say, first of all, myself, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story and everything along those lines as well. But please, yes, next season we'll try and get you back on to do an episode recap. But
do it. I may very well. Well, I'll definitely come on your show and interview. But if I get a chance to do Survivor again, it's a very good chance I would say yes at this point. My son is a little iffy right now. He's got to have another test, and but if my son is clear, I'm going to be leaving my job here very soon, and I will be able to go anywhere and do anything, and it might be interesting to go in and have another shot at it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we'd love to see that. Deb.
And Noah, get in touch with me. Do it, Noah. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Wow, and there you go. Deb Rich, formerly Deb Eaton, of course, right here on Survivor Oz. A huge thrill, and what a fun chat. This has been a lot of fun being able to bring this to you. So I'm smiling. I'm seriously sitting here smiling because no word of a lie. As I said, it's always a pleasure to speak to anybody from the first couple of seasons. And Deb is I guess somebody who is very much on our top of the list in terms of who we'd love to have on this show. And I guess we never thought it would happen, and here it is. Thanks very much to Deb for joining us, and it's a lot of fun, and looking forward to getting her back on, perhaps for an episode recap, as we said. If you're a fan of the Australian Outback, there's a bunch of interviews already online from this season that you can enjoy. Now we've covered the first boot to the winner. We've got Tina on there and sort of everybody else in between. So survivoroz.com, click on the interview, survivoroz.com/interviews. Of course, is an easy way to do that. Subscribe to us on iTunes, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, the usual channels. And, of course, if you're listening to this the day before the Cambodia finale, then we've got a lot of good stuff coming your way for that. Our Oztopsy will be live after the US Eastern airing of the show for the very first time. Of course, Australia is getting it at the same time as the US for the very first time, so we're going to switch things up. And funnily enough, Deb mentioning Todd in that interview, he is lined up and slated in to be our finale recapper. So stay tuned to our social media. It may change, we're not sure, but as of right now, it looks like it will be Todd. So any early questions you might have for him, feel free to send those in. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks again to Deb. Thanks for tuning in here to Survivor Oz. We will be back very, very shortly with lots more still to come. My name is Ben, Tribe Spoken. We will speak to you next time on The Trains.